Welcome back to GP Fans on YouTube. My name is Luther. I am joined by Nicolas once again, and we are here to discuss the Austrian Grand Prix, which was eventful for about 20 laps and then kind of faded into nothingness thanks to a couple of things, including Franco Colapinto, which I'm sure we'll get onto. But at Austria, I believe for me, and this is kind of the first thing I want to get to, it was the first time we saw this side of Lando Norris where, me personally, I didn't know how I'd be able to handle that relentless pressure from his teammate, and he handled it well. And I was very, very proud of him. I was very pleased with what I saw. I mean, I know it sounds quite like belittling, but I was like very shocked. I thought he was going to crumble, honestly. And after Canada, I think the spotlight was on him. And he needed a weekend like this, not like a weekend where he was just quicker than Piastri, which he was until the race. But in the race, he had his teammate on him and he withstood it and he won the race.
No, absolutely.
Quite impressively.
He did it. This was as convincing a weekend as he's done. I still wouldn't say it's perfect because he did have that moment when he went out on the gravel at turn 9 and turn 10, which basically gave Piastri a free run, which he then didn't take. But apart from that, I agree with you that he was on it from free practice 1 until Q3. He got a little bit lucky, although I don't think anyone would have caught him, but he did get a bit lucky with Gasly throwing the double yellows there, so everyone had to back out of their laps, which is why, it seemed like he was on pole by a huge margin, but it was mainly because of that. Piastri is fuming afterwards as well, but I don't think he would have caught him anyway. But then, yeah, like you said, his defending from Piastri was very clever. First of all, good car positioning, then allowing a pass before the DRS detection points at the top of the hill at turn 3, and getting him back immediately after. And also, maybe the most impressive thing for me was that when Piastri flat spotted his tire when he nearly took both of them out of the race, he immediately pitted after Norris, almost immediately pitted after, because he and his side of the garage would have known that what Piastri was going to try and do is do the same strategy, but try and create a bit of a tire offset. So probably go a bit longer on the first stint and then try and catch him at the end of the race. But because he pitted immediately after that flat spot, that meant that Piastri had to do 4 extra laps with that flat spotted tire, which is when he pulled the 4 or 5 second gap, which is basically how he won the race. So good pace overall, good racecraft, and good strategy. That's as good as it gets for Lando Norris.
Yeah, very good. I think the key thing is, though, if we look at Lando's best weekends this season, his 3 wins, it's that simple. Australia and Monaco, they were both followed up by, in my opinion, Piastri's best weekends of the season. So whilst we want Lando Norris to continue this momentum into Silverstone and see if he can continue into Silverstone, if you look, China, at that point, that was Oscar Piastri's best weekend of his career.
Yeah, and his first pole ever, that wasn't it? Piastri.
Yeah. And then after Monaco, followed Spain, which Piastri absolutely dominated, led every single session apart from FP1. So history, or at least what we've seen, recent history this season, would tell us that Oscar Piastri is going to bounce back, and he was so annoyed. I feel like you can tell by his reaction after the race when he got out of his car that he felt like, 1, qualifying went wrong, 2, the race, if Colapinto doesn't get in his way, if he wasn't put into traffic after his pit stops, if he didn't have that slow stop, so many things went wrong for him, and I feel like his body language came across as someone that's like, I was so close to winning, and so many things out of my control stopped me from winning. And I feel like at Silverstone, he's going to come wanting to get that win and prove a point.
Absolutely. Now, Piastri will want to try and beat him on his home turf, just like Lando did in Melbourne, although that kind of came because of that off that Piastri had. But even before that, Lando was ahead of him, so he'll want to do that back to him now. But I do still, with Norris, what I do still kind of think with him is that a lot of things have to go right for him to win, and only one thing has to go wrong for him to crumble, basically, to put it quite bluntly. And Piastri just is a lot less up and down. I actually think Norris is the quicker driver, out of pure pace wise. I think Norris is the quicker driver, but he just has too many ups and downs. And Piastri is so stable, so cool, that he is the better, maybe, overall driver because of that. Because it's not just about being quick in F1, as we all know, although it does help being quick in a car. But because of that, I backed Piastri from the start of the season, because I just think he has that sort of it factor that he just never gets too worked up. He doesn't get overly confident, doesn't get too down on himself. And yeah, this was one of those weekends where everything went right for Lando, and maybe next weekend in Silverstone it won't, or maybe Piastri won't get held up by Alpines 900 times. And he'll get a proper crack at it,
Yeah, and I think McLaren deserves some credit for the first 20 laps, because I was thinking after the race, and I was thinking back to, for example, the Verstappen the 4 years before this, Bottas and Hamilton, Schumacher and Barrichello, Alonso and Fisichella. Webber and Vettel, they sometimes battled, but sometimes there was a massive gap there. But we don't often get this, where there are two drivers at a team. And whilst me and you both agree that Piastri is the one that probably will be the better driver, but there's going to be weekends where Norris has a track that suits him, and Piastri's behind him, but close enough to battle, and we get these battles. And I feel like if you look back at recent memory, the modern dominant teams have just been one driver going away with it. The last time you can kind of remember two teammates probably battling was Rosberg and Hamilton, obviously, but before that was McLaren. So I really do appreciate them for that. Yeah, Alonso and Hamilton. So yeah, I really do give them credit for allowing them to race and put them on the show.
I would say Button and Hamilton, because Button beat Hamilton quite convincingly in 2011. That's probably, until last year, the only season ever where Hamilton was properly beaten by his teammate. Although the other years Hamilton did beat Jensen, but still, your point stands. I mean, it's the same. And so far, Canada wasn't a Spain 2016 moment. It was just Norris going for a gap that didn't exist. So far, apart from a few awkward moments and a few comings together, almost near misses, like in Austria, so far they've handled it pretty well. Credit to where it's due with McLaren, but let's see how that goes, once we're in the final few races of the season, because that obviously, when the championship is actually on the line, then I think it'll change pretty dramatically at that point.
Yeah, I'd love to see what Lando drives like when it's now or never. Has to go for it type thing, and Piastri kind of is leading, almost like Verstappen Norris last year, but closer, with more realistic chance of winning. I want to see how that works out. But obviously we nearly had a brilliant climax with Oscar Piastri really closing down on Lando, but it was ruined, if we're being completely honest. Franco Colapinto didn't see Oscar Piastri, which absolutely insane. But it was reported, and not even reported, it was said in a press release when they hired Colapinto that he was going to have a minimum of 5 races. The 5 races are up.
5 races.
He was told, be quick, don't crash, don't score points. He's done none of those.
Don't score points, they told him.
No, score points. Sorry, score points. He's definitely told to
Otherwise,
score
it would have been a big tick there.
Being be quick and don't crash. And unfortunately for him, he's gone over 3. And obviously, he was a big talking point after the end of the race for not the right reasons. 1, what did you make of the move? And 2, what did you make of his chances of staying at Alpine?
The race have reported that Briatore's been in contact with Mercedes to get to see if they could get Bottas this season. Not that they are going to get him, but just to see if he's available, and he is available. And maybe Alpine just want to save pair of hands for the rest of the year. When they would pull the trigger on this, and if they pull the trigger on this, we don't know. But that is definitely a very, very juicy piece of intel, especially since Alpine have about 8 reserve drivers, and they still go for someone outside in Bottas. But no, Colapinto. I think with Colapinto, he's. I don't want to sound harsh, but he just seems like he's a little bit out of his depth. You know what I mean? Like, he had a really good start at Williams last year. He did really well in Monza and Baku. He had, if I remember, a good US Grand Prix as well, that move on Alonso. But for every good race he's had 2 or 3 bad ones, and he's had a couple of write-offs as well. At the end of last year, he was, I think, 3rd in total damage caused on your car, and he drove 9 of the 24 races. So he doesn't keep it out of the walls, although he's done a decently good job this year of that. And yeah, he's sometimes near Gasly, but he's not beating him. He's not doing better than Doohan, and he's also not doing worse than Doohan. But I don't know why. I mean, they paid so much money for him, and it's just not paying off, apart from maybe his sponsors taking care of that part. But on the track, at least, it's not paying off.
No, I think the key thing is, if you look at qualifying pace, Doohan was significantly closer to Gasly. And one of the most attractive things about Colapinto from last season was his pace. He shocked us with the Williams' pace so often.
He out-qualified Albon a couple of times to Colapinto.
Exactly, and that's one of Albon's strengths. Like, he would pop up with amazing qualifying times. So, I don't know. I was unimpressed towards the end of last season. So then to see it happen, and I felt quite bad for Doohan. I thought he deserved a bit more time. I didn't think he was performing well, but I think we were seeing an uptick, especially with like Bahrain, where he was unfortunate to not score points and stuff like that. But then he's gone after just 6 races. Colapinto's not been better. So it's just a bit unfortunate. And I don't see a way for Doohan back in. I'm surprised if they go for Bottas, to be honest with you. I think at this point, you might as well try Paul Aaron. No harm in trying it. He's ready there.
Yeah, I just reckon they just want someone who basically hits par every race, does a decent job. If there's an opportunity, they go for it, has good feedback on the car, has a lot of F1 experience, maybe can tell you where do we have to develop a little bit, and it doesn't just come from Gasly's side of the garage, maybe from that point. But with Doohan, we also kind of forget that he has had 2 lap 1 crashes. He had that massive off at Suzuka as well. So Doohan has been more destructive than Colapinto, which normally he takes some beating, Colapinto in that aspect. But yeah, with Doohan and Colapinto, both of them were kind of 1 or 2-0 down before they even started, because with Doohan, we knew ahead of the season already that Colapinto's shadow was just over him the whole way through. With Colapinto now, he's on a race-by-race contract, so that obviously you're going to drive on the limit or over the limit if you are, fighting for your life every single Grand Prix. I'm to be honest, I'm surprised we haven't seen more Colapinto offs. We've only seen the one at Imola in qualifying. That's basically his only one, if I don't misremember. So yeah, maybe he'll get until the summer. Let's see what happens at Silverstone, which is one of the tracks he'll have driven in F2, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you think, this just popped into my head, the reason we actually haven't seen him crash, which is a good thing, is because he's driving safer, which is also why he maybe isn't as quick as he was last year?
It could be. Maybe Briatore has really told him, if I don't want you to score points one weekend and then crash the next weekend, the number one thing is don't crash. Although Briatore has been repeatedly also in official Alpine team releases, which are usually the most, dry pieces of copy. But even in those, Briatore is saying we need to have 2 cars in Q3, and we aren't having 2 cars in Q3, so we need to step it up because our car is good enough to make it there. He is quite clear that he needs Colapinto to step up. I think he wants him to stay on, but he needs to give him a reason to stay on.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, the 3 criteria he had, and that's Briatore saying that, so you can't go back on it because it's the most obvious. Sponsorships are keeping you here.
Yeah.
But, okay. Let's go to Max Verstappen, because a place that has been a track that he's dominated, 6 straight pole positions, 4 of the last 5 Austrian Grand Prix he'd won, 5 wins on that track total. Absolutely dominant there usually, and he's unfortunate in qualifying with the Gasly spin. Doesn't get his final Q3 lap, and then his race lasts 3 corners.
Yeah.
So unfortunate. But I think Max Verstappen gave people hope that he was still in the title battle because he's Max Verstappen. I feel like it was out of respect for Verstappen. He's 43 points behind. Would have been one of the biggest comebacks in history. But because he's Max Verstappen, you don't want to write him out. Now he's over 60 points out. He said in the pen after that he's happy now that people will stop asking him if he's still in the title battle. So you get where he is. He doesn't think he's in the title battle. He said he's still going to keep the exact same mentality. He wants to win every race. But is it over at this point?
It's over. It's over. And Max is just one of the biggest contrarians of all time, isn't he? He loves like going against whatever the consensus is against him. But for me, he looked so chill after the race. Like he looked so like unbothered. He was almost like I could use an afternoon off here. He said that he was watching the Spa 24. He wasn't actually watching the F1 race. He just went back to his motorhome and watched the Spa 24. Fair enough, because he had the Verstappen.com car in it and they won their class. So congrats there. But yeah, Max just said, listen, these crashes happen. Kimi apologized. He explained what happened, and no harm, no foul. It's lap 1. It's a tight corner. These things happen. He's just glad that some of that championship speculation is over, because it is over now. There are 13 rounds left, 61 points behind. So he needs to basically he needs to outscore Piastri by 5 points around, basically, for the rest of the way. Unless there's a silver bullet that Red Bull suddenly find, or if McLaren gets some kind of they just completely fall apart, and neither of those things are going to happen, especially because of the new regulations coming up, and people will eventually slow down with upgrading cars. It's unfortunately over. It would take a massive implosion at McLaren, or a Rosberg-Hamilton scenario where they just take points off each other constantly by biffing each other off the track or anything like that. So yeah, it's over. It's unfortunately it's over.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter say it would literally need like a Schumacher 99 misses 6 races because he's broken his leg, something like that. So it's probably over. Yeah, it definitely is over, for being completely honest. I liked the way Verstappen handled it. When he got out of the car, I was so curious to see how he reacted when he realized it was Kimi. And I think he handled it perfectly. It reminded me of I was a naughty kid. Sometimes my parents would know when they needed to shout at me and when they didn't need to shout at me. When there was a point where I was like, I just need to talk to him. And I feel like Max, the way he handled that was like, I could get angrier right now, but it isn't the situation to get angry. And he literally, you went up to him, asked him what happened, patted him on the back and just walked. And Verstappen was annoyed at that point. But I really do like the way he didn't make a massive meal out of it in front of this rookie. This guy's 12 races into his Formula One career.
Yeah.
I was very, very happy for Verstappen with how he handled that.
No, I mean, Verstappen is not it. Yeah, obviously, you always need to kind of wait and see what happens there. But there is no history between them, and it was a complete. He said afterwards that he genuinely just had no idea what happened, and then he saw Antonelli's car there, and he saw his wheel hanging off. So he just reckoned, well, he probably hit me then. So then Antonelli came over. Antonelli immediately apologized and just explained what happened. He locked his rears. He was a passenger. He couldn't do anything. And yeah, Max just said no harm, no foul. There, it wasn't like a Bottas 21 where he just kind of bowls over half the grid, aquaplaning. And, that's coming from an experienced driver as well. This is a teenager. He's young. He literally just finished high school. He just graduated high school last week, this guy. So yeah, learning point for Kimi, and for Max, frustrating, but he seems to be okay with it.
Yeah, and I think what Austria showed to me, and Ted, he mentioned it during the race, is Red Bull have become so dependent on Verstappen. When he is not there, they don't have another car. Yuki was battling Colapinto for the final finishing positions. And how they have gone from the dominance a few years ago to this point is insane. It's Max Verstappen just hiding every single weakness for so long, and now they're at the point where you can't hide it, and that second seat has regressed so much from Daniel Ricciardo to Perez, who was great when he first joined, and it's just progressively got worse and worse to the point where it's a back marker when it's not in the hands of Verstappen.
Do you reckon it's actually a back marker, or is Tsunoda just going? The worrying thing for Tsunoda is that he said in Austria as well that he doesn't know what he's doing wrong, or he doesn't know where the problem lies. That is the most worrying part. He's not like, oh, I need to get a better hold of this, or I think this part of the setup is where we're lagging behind. He doesn't know what's going wrong, and you can just see the confidence sapping out of him every single session he does. He started so well in Japan, then missed Q3 because of the team only giving him one run, and he made a mistake on that run. But he looked very promising in that first outing. But that's just gone downhill and downhill and downhill. And now to the point where the only point scorer for Red Bull was Liam Lawson in P6, because Hadjar didn't score points either. So Liam Lawson all the way. Who would have thought, right? After 3 races.
Needed it as well.
Yeah, needed it, definitely.
I think for Yuki, I know they're different regulations and I know they're different cars, but I just can't be like, okay, Pierre Gasly was just a bad driver when he was at Red Bull. Albon was just a bad driver when he was Red Bull. Perez was the one. It just never made sense to me, and I knew it was the confidence being zapped out of him. But I feel like it can't just be, and I know confidence is a massive thing in Formula 1, but I feel like Yuki, the first 2 races in the season, was brilliant. He got messed up by strategy in Australia and his front wing just breaking overload in China. He was doing good. Yuki has improved so much over the last few seasons, and then he goes to Red Bull and now it looks like he can't drive a car.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know how they fix it, and I'm so worried for Hadjar.
Hadjar, who said he said he's scared of being promoted. He said that in public. He said, I'll be ready if they call me up, but I don't want to go there right now. He literally said he didn't want to, and that he's scared, which is not what you want out of your academy driver. But it's fair enough. It's completely fair enough. It's you know what I mean? But yeah, Yuki looks like a mug right now, and we know, because this is his 5th season in F1, we know he's a very quick driver. That has never been up for debate. It's first it was his short fuse, it was his lack of technical feedback. Those were kind of his shortcomings. No pun intended there, but now it just seems like he doesn't have pace anymore, and it's such an odd one. And I was thinking about this as well, but at the start of last year, right? Obviously all the stuff with Christian Horner happened. And at the time, Jos Verstappen obviously got cleared of everything, but Jos Verstappen kind of did a bit of a sort of whistle blow saying that if this guy doesn't leave, this team is going to implode because the morale and the cohesion and the chemistry here is just gone now because nobody kind of trusts him anymore. And we've seen Rob Marshall leave, we've seen Jonathan Wheatley leave, we've seen Adrian Newey leave, which, you know, 3 like absolute pillars of the success that Red Bull have had. And like you said, Verstappen is masking everything he can, but it's reaching a point now where, you know, when do we start saying, should we look at these top guys? Should we look at Dr. Marco and Mr. Horner and think, should we actually move on from this guy who's, you know, controversial on a good day and this other guy who is 82 years old or 83 years old at this point, but who has meant so much to this team and is a legend, an absolute legend of the sport, but is getting on a little bit now?
Yeah, I mean, the words of Toto Wolff, everyone has an expiry date.
Yeah.
You know, and I say that Ferrari shouldn't get rid of Fred because there's been too much
ridiculous,
change.
Man. That story was ridiculous.
Don't even get me started, bro.
He's the least of their problems, literally.
Exactly. But that's because Ferrari have been chopping and changing constantly. Sometimes a new voice is needed, and Christian Horner has been there since Red Bull bought Jaguar, so he has been there for absolutely ages. And whilst he is one of the great team principals, he has led 2 of the dominant eras in the modern era of Formula One. So, but the team is progressing and it's getting to a point that we haven't seen Red Bull at for a while. So I'm not sure if he is the man, because they're going to finish 4th in the Constructors this season.
They are.
And what I would say is, because of 2026, I don't think now is the time to change team principles. I don't think going into 2026 is the time to change team principles. So maybe give him that season. And if you're not seeing improvements, then maybe Helmut Marko and him need to take some ownership. But for now, hang fire.
Right. So you think they need to do it basically what a lot of times happens in the NBA is where they let a general manager do the draft and then fire him immediately after, you know, because
give him one last draft.
Yeah, no, just be like, because you have worked towards this point for a long time, so we're going to let you finish that cycle. But as soon as we start that new cycle, you're out. That's what you're saying. By the way, I just had to look this up, but last time Red Bull finished 4th in the Constructors was 2015, behind Williams, Ferrari, Mercedes.
Is that Massa and Bottas?
Massa and Bottas, yeah. Pick up Felipe Massa.
Solid lineup, that. Very solid lineup. Okay, let's quickly talk about Ferrari, because they were the only team that finished within a minute of the McLarens in Austria. I think, let me see, I have the gap right here. Leclerc was near enough 20 seconds away from Norris, and Hamilton was just under 30 seconds away from Norris. The upgrades worked. They improved their qualifying pace. Leclerc obviously messed up his final lap, so he didn't get to improve. Hamilton had a brake issue, which he said lost him a 10th. So he would have finished about half a second away from Norris anyway. But they improved and they were the closest car. I think it was a weekend that was needed with all that talk. As we both agreed, the Fred Vasseur talk was absolutely ridiculous. But this being the first part of a string of upgrades coming, I think some of them are delayed now, but a bunch of upgrades are coming. I don't think Ferrari are going to be battling for consistent wins at any point this season. I think they might be able to grab a win or two at some point. But for me, I think the ability to show the progress is important, and the fact that they're showing it is good.
Right. I don't want to bring you down too much, but for me, it was like Verstappen was out after 3 corners. Mercedes had like one of their most off weekends of the year at a track that suits them horribly, because this Mercedes has 3 things it doesn't like, which is a rough surface, which is high temperature, and long, quick corners. And it's tick, tick, tick on that.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, I think it might be a bit of both, to be fair, where Ferrari have actually improved a lot, but they also just caught, Red Bull on their worst weekend of the year by far, and on Mercedes on their worst weekend of the year. But yeah, they needed it, to be fair. This is what you said. It's something they definitely needed. It was the floor, wasn't it, that they upgraded for this? Yes. It's funny hearing Hamilton say at the start of the weekend, like, yeah, I'm not too sure about this upgrade, to be honest. And then Leclerc after the race saying, oh, wow, this new floor is amazing. Like, it's just such a contrast between the two of them. Let's hope Ferrari found something here. Let's hope that Ferrari can move their way forward and maybe not challenge, but at least get in the same postal code as McLaren, because this was their most dominant weekend of the season, I'd say, even more so than Miami. But good signs, this is a good start for them. This is a good building block also heading into next year. Solid weekend for Ferrari, but I have my question marks about, did they just catch off their rivals on a bad weekend?
I think probably. I think from what I saw, I think if Verstappen had made it, I think he would have been battling with Leclerc for third, but I think he would have probably got it because of the lifting and coasting that Ferrari had to do.
Right.
So I think Verstappen would have probably finished ahead of Leclerc because of that, because they were pretty much driving in eco mode the entire race. Exactly. 4th podium for Leclerc this season. And I just think this season feels like it's been absolutely terrible for Ferrari. And you look at the constructor standings and they're second.
Yeah, they're second.
Which is a positive for them, because I think it's true. It's been very, very destructive. You look China, the double disqualification, you add those points to it, they probably have a bigger gap than a 1-point gap to Mercedes. So with all of that going on, them being second, I think they can take the positive, because now the improvements come. And I think once again, going into 2026, Leclerc said it's very important for morale more than anything that they can show that they can improve. But also on Leclerc and Hamilton, have you noticed that in every interview, they almost always contrast each other?
Yeah.
When Hamilton's happy, Leclerc's not. When Leclerc's happy, Hamilton's not.
And they both love to disagree with the Ferrari strategy calls during races always. I think with Leclerc, it's kind of like this sort of PTSD kicking in of all the times they've thrown away his races. But it doesn't help either when every strategy call you make as a team just gets completely, distrusted by the drivers. At some point as a driver, you have to trust your team as well. By the way, can I compare the Ferrari being second now to when Mourinho's Man United finished second behind City, but they were 80 points behind them?
And he said that it was the
best ever achievement,
best achievement of his career.
Is this comparable to you as a Man United and Ferrari fan?
I think Fred Vasseur would say this is the best achievement of his career. I think it's very comparable, actually. Best of a bad bunch is what Man United were this season, and it seems like it's what Ferrari are this season, because Oscar Piastri has enough points to lead the constructors by himself.
Does he? Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah,
that's good. I know that I calculated yesterday that if you put Ferrari and Mercedes points together, they'd have 2 more than McLaren.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's how far ahead they are. They are 200 points ahead.
Because if you look at the standings, I think we are just about ahead of Lando Norris. It's not that, because Lando Norris is on 201 points. We're on 210.
Let's go.
Absolutely brilliant. But Silverstone says, let's have a quick chat about Silverstone, because I remember it as the kind of flashpoint of McLaren being better. They got their double podium in 2023. And from that point onwards, it's just been upwards to the point where they are now the dominant team in Formula One. So they returned to this place where the boom started. And Silverstone, we know it absolutely destroys your tires. A lot of fast corners, very fun for racing. So I'm hoping we see what we saw for the first 20 laps. But I do agree with you from what you said earlier. I think Oscar Piastri wants to beat Lando Norris, especially more than ever because Lando got him on his home turf.
Yeah. I expect Oscar Piastri to put his fist on the table this weekend and remind everyone that he is the one to beat this season. It'll be interesting to see how how Hamilton loves Silverstone. Obviously, he's done very well historically. He's won it 8 times. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Isn't it? One time on three wheels, which I don't think anyone's going to do in the near future. But also, he won it last year, right, Hamilton?
Yeah, he won it last year.
And and even though this track should not suit the Mercedes, but same last year, Austria shouldn't suit the Mercedes, but Russell won it. Obviously, he won because Norris and Max had their touch, but he wasn't far behind them. He's about 10, 15 seconds behind them at that point, which is reasonable. Hamilton did win at Silverstone last year. I'll be very curious to see how he does. He usually, even in a year like last year when Russell did really beat him pretty badly, but at Silverstone, he comes alive. So let's see how he does there. First time as a Ferrari driver, so first time as a sort of non-UK based team that he's there. Curious to see how many Ferrari caps we'll see, or if everyone's just rocking his old McLaren and Mercedes merch. But yeah, for me, Silverstone is all about being on Hamilton watch, basically, because he has such a connection with the fans. He has such a connection with the circuit. He's, but I expect Piastri to win. Verstappen should be in and around the podium, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is the weekend where Hamilton beats Leclerc in quali, but also in the race.
If I was to tell you there's a 60% chance of rain on Sunday, would anything change?
Lance Stroll got his only pole position in the rain in Turkey. So,
yeah, Lance Stroll as also. No, okay. From what I've seen from Hamilton this season, and Hamilton tends to look like a different beast in certain tracks, Silverstone, Hungary, you see Lewis Hamilton appear, So I think if you don't see him for the first time, I think, all season. Okay, the China sprint race. I don't think he was quicker than Leclerc in Imola, even though he beat him because the safety cars are the reason he beat Leclerc that weekend. If we don't see him beat Leclerc or be quicker than Leclerc all weekend for the first time this season, I'll be surprised. I think the crowd helps him. I think you genuinely do get that boost, that they almost cheer you on and they push the car for you a bit more. So I expect him to be better.
Is there actually a 60% chance of rain on Sunday?
Yeah, I just checked the weather app.
Wow. But it's also meant to be very hot, right, this weekend?
19 degrees.
19 degrees, 20, okay.
19 in Silverstone.
Okay, so it's actually going to stay wet, is what I mean. So if it's like 30 degrees and it rains, like it's dry within an hour again. All right, that changes things. That changes things a lot, doesn't it?
I think it brings Verstappen more into the fold with the McLarens.
Yeah. Remember in Melbourne, he was close to them until it dried up, and obviously we had a lot of offs in Melbourne as well because of that heavy sudden rain. That's interesting. That actually makes it a lot more exciting, doesn't it?
And Silverstone rain is legendary. We've had some absolutely chaotic races in Silverstone because of the rain. So yeah, it does change. And I think personally, if it does rain and it stays like that, I think it will be a battle between the McLarens and Verstappen for a victory. I think Piastri and Verstappen. I do think Piastri is going to have a step on Norris this weekend. So I think Verstappen will also have the step on him. And I think we're going to see Verstappen, a free Verstappen.
Verstappen.
No pressure on him. Not that he'd worry about the pressure, but he's just driving. He's almost like he's sim racing. He's just enjoying the drive.
Doesn't have to worry about his penalty points either again. He has 3 now to play with, so he'd need to do something pretty bad to get a race ban.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be an enjoyable race, and I'm going to still say Leclerc has the step on Hamilton. I just think he's quicker than him. I just think he's quicker than him. So I think that will happen. I think I'm just going to give a quick podium prediction. Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, Russell.
That's too many people to fit on a podium, I think.
I was debating Russell or Norris on the last three, so Russell came out of my thing. But Norris third and then Russell fourth, yes.
Verstappen, Piastri, Norris, I'll go for. We're due a Verstappen, like just absolutely where did that come from race from Max Verstappen. This could be it.
Okay, hopefully it is it. And we'll be here to talk about whatever happens next week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. And hopefully you enjoyed this race weekend. If you want to see any coverage in the lead up to the race, go to GPFans website. And also check out Nicolas's news videos that go up on our channel, that have been going up on our channel this week.
Yes.
See you soon. Enjoy.